Hello and welcome to a bonus video from MinnMax. I'm Ben Hansen, joined by Mike Mahardy.
Hey, Ben.
Little Mike Mahardy on his big transitional moment. Congratulations, sir. You are at Gamespot right now, but you have a mysterious new gig in the future.
Yeah, as of this publishing, I think I'll probably have announced within a few days. But yeah, I've got something new coming up. Taking a weekend to relax and then starting the new job on Monday. But right now I'm still employed by GameSpot for another day and a half or so as of recording. But yeah, It's been 4 years and 9 months when I checked LinkedIn. It feels like a long time, and it also feels like no time at all. But
I feel like you were just hired there. But I mean, it's not going to be that different. Like, congratulations on your new gig at Giant Bomb. I think you're going to be working with a lot of the same people still, so it works out. Yeah,
just like my desk is still the same. I was going to go to Giant Bomb West for a while. They were talking about it, but then I just decided to stay in New York. No, as a matter of fact, I've become such a big wrestling fan in the last year or so. AEW hit me up. And MJF and I are really good buddies, so he asked me if I could produce his podcast. It's called MMJF.
Oh, that's sweet, man. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Okay, any hints staying in the press, leaving press? A lot of people are like, oh, he's going to go design art assets for Warframe or some nonsense.
That would be awesome. I'm staying in the press.
Okay.
I'm staying in New York, which that's a scoop that I'm staying in New York. I have not said that publicly.
Boy, hang on. I feel the internet, just the tremors reverberating through the entire internet, Mike Mahardy.
Yeah. So I think the Beastcast will have gone up this morning or whenever you put it up along. Yeah. So I think I'll mention it on there. But yeah, I'm staying in my apartment, just going downtown instead.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Right. Enough teasers. Yep. We have a lot to unpack here. By the way, if you're watching this on YouTube, thank you. Glad you found it. Clearly, you're Mike's biggest fan. So, hey, let him know in the comments, everybody. But if you want the audio version of this, because you don't want to look at our dumb faces anymore, it's going to be in the Patreon exclusive feed. So if you support MinnMax at the $5 tier, you unlock the Patreon exclusive feed where like the deepest dives go, max spoilers, a ton of bonus content in there. So check that out. Mike, that's the Patreon lifestyle, is you have to like constantly say the same things over and over and over again because new people tune in every day, you know?
Yeah. How you guys been doing? Seems like you guys have been doing really well.
Yeah, we're doing all right. It's like, it's nice. We're at a level where it's like, okay, it is beyond sustainable. You know, like it was very scary of like, okay, right when we launched it, it's like, okay, if we hit like a certain dollar amount, God, maybe we can still do something, get some people together. I'll do a lot of freelance video stuff, but now it's nice. It's like, okay, it's at a level where I can devote all my time to this thing and just make content for the community. Like it's a weird level of purity that I'm not really used to, of just every once in a while I wake up and realize like, oh yeah, it's just us. Like as long as the community is happy and I'm happy, hand shook, done deal. It's sweet. You ever tempted to go to that Patreon lifestyle?
Tempted, yeah, pretty often. We're just going up Friday. So CBSI for a while has been obviously the umbrella I've been working under, and still technically as of today I am. Well, now it's Viacom CBS, and I know from the outside, and I don't have any like super inside knowledge, but I know even from within, there's still questions of like what's going to happen in the future. And I know there's like rumors and everything about what sites they might be selling to other people. And I don't know much about that, but it's still, I imagine it would be weird to be doing Patreon and not have this like larger umbrella that we're also thinking about for better or worse. Because right now it's been 5 years now combined with, you know, like freelancing and whatnot, but it was always, hey, what's GameSpot's aim here? And then also like we have to think about CBSI's goals and everything. Like it'd be weird to go off on my own. It's very tempting though, because of the independence.
Right. And then you have like waves of, constant anxiety, but you have waves of big anxiety of just thinking like, man, we have like the greatest privilege being able to create content just for the community here at MinnMax. And then you start to lose sleep at night about like, is this what we want to be doing? If we could be doing anything? And I'm not saying I'm going to go off and make a documentary about hairstyles. I don't know what the worst thing for the community would be. But is that weird recheck of like, okay, it's fun to do like reaction videos. They do well on YouTube, but like, is that what we want the future to be? Can we take bigger swings? How much can you allot the time to take those big swings? It's a lot of that nonsense. But enough about me. We go back a ways. You were a Game Informer intern for, would you call that the start of your video game industry career?
Yeah, I think so. I had been like writing for a local paper in Arkansas, oddly enough. I went to University of Arkansas for 2 years for a girl. I would not advise that, girl or guy. And I was writing for a local paper. I did a review for Skyrim and Arkham City. And then I applied to the internship. I think I applied for the summer term, didn't get it. And then the fall I got. So I came to annoy you guys in September 2012 to December-ish 2012.
That was almost 8 years ago. That's absurd to think about, man.
Yeah. And that's when I met Tim. I think Tim Turry first off was the one who kind of, because the first thing I ever did with you guys was the Extra Life marathon that year. It was when Borderlands 2 had just come out.
Really?
And so, yeah, we were playing. I jumped
Jason
into a co-op game across the room with Tim and Reichert, and I didn't know Dan at the time. And it was a case where they had been playing all night. Well, Dan reviewed the game, so he had like a level 45 character, and I jumped in with a new character, and I heard across the room Dan kind of whisper complaining to Tim Turby, like, why the is this guy dying so much? And I was like, Tim's like, well, he is level 3 and you're like 45. That was my first like
really? He's complaining about the intern?
And then my next one was being at Kyle Hilliard's, like he had a house party in a new house or something. And it came to Dan's attention that I had not, and I was 20 at the time, and I had not seen Terminator 2. And Dan like sprinted across the room to berate me for that. So we had a very positive start to Dan and I's relationship. And then, I kind of started talking to you guys more, but very much, I think I took on like I was 2 other interns, Odell Harmon, who has been on Kind of Funny a few times. I think he's doing his own freelancing thing. And Jordan Laporte, who I don't think is in games anymore. He was like fact checking scripts for a while for like TV or something of the sort. And then I haven't seen him in a while, but my thing became just like writing a bunch of op-eds about whatever was happening. I don't know if anything ever got into the print version. It was mainly online. But yeah, since then it's been just catching up with you guys at conventions and whatnot. My first convention was GDC 2013.
You seem so exasperated, Mike. You're like, and then I guess, I don't know, I talk to Tim every once in a while. And
like you said, I can't believe it was 8 years ago now.
So hang on, try to refresh my memory, because you've come back to Minnesota a fair number of times and stuff, but that time, okay, so was this when you were an intern, when you were coming back? There was a time when Rick Game Informer, and I was in the 3rd floor bathroom. I won't put this delicately, but pooping my brains out. And then I hear what is the most chilling sound. It's like 2 glass bottles banging together, and it's the faintest sound. And it's glass bottles banging together, and this...
Yeah. And it's getting closer, right?
Yeah. Number one fear in my life is E.T. Has been since I was a kid. It's petrified of E.T. And it sounded like just a screaming E.T., but a subtly screaming E.T. And then I'm in the bathroom like, what is that? And then I hear it just get closer and closer. Like it sounded like it was 400 yards away. Got closer and closer. Until eventually the bathroom door swings open, and there's somebody making the worst ET sounds and banging these bottles together. And I pissed myself, Mike. And I said, like, get out of here. And then found out it was you, and you were looking for me. And in doing so, you were banging glass bottles together and screaming like ET, marching around the office.
Yeah, because the intern's office was on the 2nd floor, right? And you guys are on the 3rd.
3rd and 4th, but who cares?
It had come to my attention that every day at like 3 p.m. you would go to the downstairs bathroom to poop in private.
No, that's my trick, man. I'm always pooping. I was down there 60% of the day.
And yeah, we had, I think a long ago, like a Game Informer veteran, I don't know who it was, had come in, and he brought a bunch of these like airplane-sized liquor bottles.
Yeah.
And, like being interns and dirt poor, we're like, oh, there's free booze upstairs. I was also like 20, like newly 21. Like, I'm going to go get some.
Thank you for covering our legal
I had my
ass,
own office because it was like this random room.
Uh-huh.
And I think subconsciously I was channeling the Warriors come out to play thing. But yeah, I was just like, what's the weirdest thing I could do? So I like had a whole hallway to work with. And I'm like, I know Ben's in there. I saw him go in there, and I'm bored and I want to mess with him. So I start clinking him, like, yee! And then I just start slowly coming toward the bathroom. And you came into the intern's office afterwards, like laughing hysterically. And I denied it was me for a good few hours until I took credit for it.
That's right. And then I tried to throw myself off the balcony because I was convinced that E.T. was somewhere in the office, and you guys really did talk me back from that ledge. All right. So going back to that era, Dan gave you a lot of crap for, Terminator 2, all that stuff. What struck you about working with Dan back in those days? Interacting with him.
It was, I think when you see his public persona, especially once he went to Giant Bomb, he's got a knack for asking the obvious questions a lot of other people might be afraid to admit that they also want to ask. Or he just might ask obvious questions that nobody needs to ask.
Uh-huh.
But it was pretty apparent right when you meet him that he's actually a really, really focused and hardworking person. And that struck me at the time because I didn't know anything about him. I was like, oh, this is the goof of Game Informer, right? I know he writes great reviews and everything, but like outside of that, he's just the goof. And then I met him. He's actually kind of serious until I got to know him. And once I got to know him, obviously, we discovered we both like Rocky. It was kind of, the rest was history. But he...
the rest was history. By that, you mean you got drunk and watched Rocky a couple times?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, he was definitely more dedicated and hardworking than I think his public persona might let on.
Ah, there we go.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
Very shrewd.
Don't tell him I said that.
No, I definitely won't. So the transition from Game Informer, you were doing freelance for a while and then got picked up at GameSpot. I'm trying to figure out like what that gap was. It wasn't too long.
So I went to GDC 2013. I had pitched a few features to, at the time, it was Russ Pitts and Matt Lyon at Polygon. Russ Pitts has since gone on. I think he's doing escapist stuff now. But at the time, I pitched a story about the Strong Museum in Rochester, New York.
Yeah, because that's where you're from,
they were
right?
starting the International Center for the History of Electronic Games. And I pitched a story. I'm like, hey, they're doing some cool like preservation work up there. This would have been 2013, right after GDC. I pitched it. So almost exactly 7 years ago. And I pitched it and Russ liked the pitch and I wrote it and it went up. And then right after that, I also did a story about Fulbright Company before Gone Home came out. I was like, yeah, they seem like they might be a big deal in some time. And then I did a few more. The most notable thing for me, at least for Polygon, I did a cover story, which they call like just their big like centerpieces, which they'll devote a lot of resources to. And it was 30,000 words pretty much on the history and kind of impact of Looking Glass Studios in the 90s.
Yeah, yeah.
And I used that as a frame story to talk about the birth of the first Xbox, because Seamus Blackley was closely tied to Looking Glass. BioShock itself, with Ken Levine starting on System Shock 2 and then branching off to Irrational at the time. Just all these smaller titles that kind of, there's like this exodus of people, or diaspora, I guess, if you want to say that, from Looking Glass into all these renowned projects. I'm like, oh, it's kind of cool, especially because I think in the last 5 to 10 years, we've gotten much more back into the nebulous immersive sims, and they all kind of started with Origin and Looking Glass Studios, that school of, Warren Spector, Richard Garriott,
right.
Paul Lerner, and everybody involved with that. And
but then all that stuff goes back to like wizardry and stuff that they're looking at, right?
Yes, and then that was throughout college. I also was writing news for IGN. Andrew Goldfarb and Mitch Dyer took me on at the time. That was my freelancing. And then right when I graduated college, I got lucky. Chris Waters at GameSpot had just moved over to the more, I think it was more sponsored content. So they needed an editor. So I joined right then, 2015. July 21st, 2015 was my first day. And I was there on editorial for about a year and a half. And then once it became clear that Danny O'Dwyer was getting ready to leave, I was like, all right, I'll start learning video. Like I kind of convinced them. I was like, hey, just while you find someone else, let me kind of do some video stuff.
And you
op-eds,
tried putting on that terrible accent too, which I thought was in poor taste. You're really trying to step up and just be like, I can be the new Danny, man. I'll be whatever you need me to be.
Yeah, I like dyed my hair gray for a while. It didn't work out at all. It was weird.
It was embarrassing.
People noticed he got significantly uglier.
So then you started doing more like long form videos and stuff.
Yeah, so I started Danny had been starting to do these documentaries. I think the first one they did was The Witcher 3, which if you look back at it, it's still very much, there's a lot of documentary aspects and interviews about the history of CD Projekt. And there's also the other half, which is still very much a preview. It's like, here's what the world of The Witcher 3 will be. Here's what Skellige will look like. Here's what, here's like the music of it. It was very much still a preview. From there, I think that's when Danny started to hone his skills in stepping outside the confines of a traditional preview. And it's like, let's make this more of a feature length kind of actual documentary. And I watched those. He did the Overwatch one, which did really well. And I kind of, as he was leaving, decided to pitch one about Mafia 3 at the time when they were doing it at Hangar 13. And I wanted to kind of start proving I could do those. I did a little bit, just like I ended up leaving Arkansas to go back to Syracuse and studied journalism, graduated from there. So like with my crime reporting beat my senior year for my capstone, I ended up developing halfway decent like journalism reporting chops. So I was like, all right, let's combine that with video, see if I can do anything. Mafia 3 was the first one, and they went pretty well. And we are also trying to fill a hole that Danny had created when he left. And yeah, from there I did Mafia 3. I did, trying to remember what the next one would have been, Civ 6 maybe.
Yeah. What was the,
there was a bunch of them.
What was the toughest thing about hosting those or putting those together?
It was coming from editorial. It was easy for me to imagine, I'll transcribe. I tend to transcribe my own stuff, interviews, just because it jogs my memory and I'm reliving it all, and I don't have to like refer to it as often. It was just, holy shit, I have all this material to work with. Where do I even start? Editorial, it's easier for me. Just like a written feature, it's easier for me. I kind of figure out the intro scene and outro when I'm reporting on it, and then I just have that in my head. With a video, it's way harder. It's more of like you're sculpting rather than creating from scratch. And that was very new to me. It was, okay, I have all this material, B-roll, really good interviews. Where do I even start? It's like, what's a good opening quote? Do I even want to start with a quote? Do I want to start with some sort of VO by me detailing the history of the studio? Is that boring? Do I want to start with something more cinematic?
Did you have a tough time recording your own voice and listening to your voice and trying to get that tone of like, I want to sound confident, but I don't want to be a douchebag, which I know is always a challenge for you.
I still sound like a douchebag all the time. Right. I'm trying to work on that. It was definitely weird at first. I have since gotten very used to it. I think what I hear when I'm talking lines up pretty well with what my voice actually sounds like now. I hate my voice, and now I'm just used to hearing it. It was the biggest challenge for me was probably, I've always been pretty good in the scripting phase, just being like with a writing background. For me, it's like I knew how to edit, but I wasn't great at it, and I wanted to do my own editing. And the anecdote that I tell people is Jake Decker and we started a show called Reboot. It was more like critical video essays. Again, it was kind of when Danny had left with The Point. A lot of this stuff I inherited, kind of, which is very exciting because my next thing is something we're building from the ground up, which I'm very excited about. But GameSpot was very much, especially on videos, me inheriting things, whether it was The Lobby, which I hosted for a while, or these documentaries that, Danny didn't start in games, but for GameSpot, he was the first one to do stuff like that. For when he left and they lost The Point, which was his more op-ed show, it was like, what do we want to do? And I was like, I kind of want to go a little more, I don't know if academic's the right word, because I'm not an academic, but The Point was he could be pretty lighthearted, even though he had a lot of insightful points. I actually, looking back, he did a much better job than I did at balancing out the critical aspects with the kind of comedic bits that really let you ease you into the critical aspects. Yeah. I think I definitely did it in a snootier way. Looking back, I wish that younger me had been like lightened up a little bit. But
what were you trying to prove? Why'd you go for that tone?
I just wanted to show people that I know more than them about everything. It's like, it's not an easy thing to prove because you got to talk about everything and be knowledgeable about it. And Jake Decker and he was the guy who was shooting it all and initially editing it all. And then one day, after Mary Kish had left to go to Twitch, she came in to do a happy hour with us when she was still in San Francisco. And Mary being Mary, and her and I are very good friends, and we work together a lot still. We do. We're announcing something regarding Resident Knievel very soon. Which is a show where we just play through all the Resident Evil games.
And you've already done every one, right?
No, we still haven't done Revelations 2. That's like the long lost series, but we're doing it again for Nemesis Remake. And she came in one day and Jake was editing Reboot, which I had written and hosted. And, we had gone on location to shoot somewhere. And she's like, oh, I see you're still making other people make your videos for you. She meant it as a joke because there was like a joke at the time. It's like, oh, scripting and hosting don't matter. The editing is where the video is really made.
I think that's
true.
And
it pissed me off so fucking much. Like, you know what? And I went home that night. Like I left happy hour early to go home. I was fuming and I went home and started. I knew how to use Premiere, but I started just like, well, okay, what don't I know how to do? And then it must have been a week later. And I'm like, Jake, I'm going to edit this one. And it was an episode about how Metro Last Light was continuing in the vein of Half-Life 2 style shooters. And I edited the whole thing. I was like, okay, I did it. And then like I sent it to Mary, like with a middle finger. I was like, hey, here you go. And then ever since then, I've been editing most of my own stuff. And a lot of it was just a joke, but
you say a lot
like,
of it. I just can't imagine you going home and watching YouTube tutorials like, the stress balls in both hands.
It was learning. I went home still mad about it. And then I started really thinking about when will I have time to learn this editing when I'm already writing all this other stuff and I'm hosting it all. And a lot of it became free time. And then when I did start editing my own stuff, I think I wanted to start editing I wanted to be able to pass for an editor right away and not look like I was just floundering. And now I would consider myself a pretty fluent editor. Now I'm trying to teach myself like more After Effects in my free time, which that's a different language in a lot of ways. But yeah, you could thank Mary Kish. Well, I don't know why you would thank her, but she is the reason I kind of like finally just started to bunker down and start editing my own stuff.
Did it make you appreciate
and editing for a while? For sure. It wasn't just, it was nice to be able to edit my own stuff. It gave me such a better understanding of how I should script things, whether for me to edit down the line or especially for other people. I really do actually enjoy scripting for other people to edit. It's a unique challenge, and it's kind of nice to be able to give some sort of direction in the script. And I think my scripting skills have definitely gotten better because I learned to edit. That was definitely the biggest challenge was, man, post-production to me is just so foreign. And now it's just something I do all the time on my own videos. And editing to me now is actually probably the most fun part, I would say.
Yeah. Turns out it's super fun.
Yeah.
What was the biggest shocker once you quote unquote broke into the industry? You get into GameSpot, and maybe not about like GameSpot in particular, but just like, I guess being an intern or being on the outside, you don't see that this is what the game industry is actually like to be in the middle of.
Yeah. I think maybe this is I think this is probably something somebody would say about any industry they're getting into that's tight knit and there are human beings involved. Man, it's a cliquey fucking group. There are social like taboos, and there are people that don't talk to each other, and there are grudges, and there are dumb human things that we're all victims of at a certain time. But it was weird for me to look up to all these people, and the people I became friends with, I got to know, and that was great. But there are other people outside of Game Informer and GameSpot that once I got to know them more, I'm like, oh wait, they're human, and they have these problems with other people, and a lot of people don't like them, or vice versa. And it's just crazy how such a tight knit kind of vacuum of a community can develop its own like social hierarchies, or if that's the right word, or kind of like topography, I guess. I don't know.
This is like weird going out to drinks. That's where you see that stuff.
What's that?
You see it like going out to drinks, or you see it just people complaining about their office environment versus other office environments, all that stuff?
Going out to drinks. Yeah. And the amount of booze involved in games media was definitely a shocker. Cause there's been times when I like have just for, I don't know if the fun of it is the right word, but maybe just for the fun of it, I've kind of just like laid off drinking for a few months, like a lot of people do. And even then I'm like, it's crazy how much booze is intertwined with these after hours things with games media and PR and everything. And I know a fair amount of people who don't drink at all, and they say it's definitely been a challenge for them to, break into these social circles where it's just like second nature. I don't know if that was a shocker, but it was definitely not something I was expecting going in.
Yeah. How do you think you've improved socially, emotionally throughout years at GameSpot and beyond, about just trying to get along better with coworkers, lessons learned along the way, that type of stuff?
I was so much more boisterous in the office. Like, maybe not a Game Informer, but I come from a big family where dinner is just shouting louder than the other person. And whether I felt confident or not, I just felt like I should always exude an abundance of confidence. And then that oftentimes just became like I'm making an ass of myself in the office. And I just assumed that was fine. But then like I had bosses who I would disagree with on a lot of things creatively. But then in terms of my behavior and my rapport as this relatively, compared to some people, a young person in this office setting, it's my first job and it's like related to video games, and I'm just kind of being loud and not really being self-aware. And when people started calling me out for that, of course I was stubborn. I was like, no, this is how I act and everything. And it's whatever. They just, I don't know. They just think I'm too loud for a while. But then looking back, I was like, oh man, if I saw like footage of me in the office, I'd probably cringe and be very, well, this guy's a dick. Like this guy's a tool. What is he doing?
And you insist you're not a dick or a tool, or the jury's still out?
I might have used to be. I don't think I am anymore.
Okay.
I think I carry myself a little better now for sure.
The yelling
whether it's
thing,
a social situation after work or just like in the office and everything.
Yeah, the yelling thing is confusing because it's like, you're going for jokes or you were just like, this feature sucks, and then you kicked a garbage can?
No, I wasn't yelling angrily. It was just every fucking joke I told, I had to be loud because it was hilarious and everybody should hear it. It was just, I guess at that time I was more of a narcissist coming in, and I think the very act of getting hired at GameSpot, I think I just kind of inflated my ego for a little bit. Right. Just because that was my goal for so long. It's like, oh, I achieved that. Like, what can I do? Turns out there's a whole lot I can't do. And I guess it was just more becoming more humbled throughout the years. And I still have a little work on that I need to do. But that was definitely a big challenge for me as this person fresh out of college and living on the West Coast, far away from home for, 5 years. And I definitely mellowed out. But at first there were managers of mine telling me to chill out and like, you're a bit too much sometimes. And I didn't really believe them. But looking back, I was like, that was a necessary change I needed to make because I could be a little bit too much for a lot of people, like most people. And I totally get why. Do
you think some of that comes from like kind of the jock background, the athletic background where you're used to being competitive? And so in a competitive environment, when you're like, hey, I'm at a good outlet, now I'm going to act like I just won the Super Bowl here. Because what, you played rugby or something?
Yeah, it was rugby. No, okay. I played lacrosse. I played in college. I actually kind of got into writing because I fractured my tailbone during a lacrosse game, took a shot on my lower back, and it messed up the muscles down to my tailbone, and it like snapped it over, as the doctors described it. And I couldn't play for like a year, and I was like, I don't know even know if I want to do this anymore. There's an opening at the Arkansas Traveler, was the student paper, and I applied, and it was as assistant sports editor at first. And then I was like, all right, I'll start writing about sports because I know lacrosse. They didn't have a lacrosse team, it was club, but I was like, start writing about track and field and baseball. Then I moved over to features. But I definitely think a lot of people's first impression of me, I don't know if it's the case anymore, but I think initially, maybe at Game Informer, you could probably tell me, I think most people assume I am some sort of a jock. And I don't necessarily know why. I think I just carried some of that behavior over. You're
like I don't want to kiss your ass. You're like a good-looking, kind of smug, confident guy. I assume you have some muscles hiding under that shirt. So it's a little bit just like, I don't trust this. We got a fake-ass gamer boy in our hands here.
Yeah, I know Jeff Cork was convinced I was a frat boy for a while.
Right. Yeah, a little bit of that vibe.
Weird because that surprised me because I could definitely see the jock thing because I don't think I ever acted like a jock, but at first glance, I could definitely be one.
I think storming out of a party because somebody said a basic fact about what you can and can't do implies you have a certain amount of that lifestyle in you.
Yeah, there's definitely a competitive edge, which I think has worn off a bit in the immediate sense. But I think in the big picture, it's still, I would very much like GameSpot to be the best YouTube channel there is for games. And I'd like whatever the next thing I'm doing is, I'd like this to be the place people go for this kind of thing. But
yeah,
I definitely for a while was, Jeff Cork saying like, oh, this frat guy with this faux hawk. And I was like, I'm wearing a Legend of Zelda. It's a T Fury shirt. It's Link blowing into an NES cartridge as if he's playing an ocarina.
Classic.
Like, what frat guy would wear this?
Well, he might have been drinking beer out of that ocarina as a mess. I just got a flashback to of you being in the Game Informer office and you picked up the Buster Sword because I have like a replica Buster Sword. And you said, in a flat tone, you go, man, I could really Sephiroth somebody with this thing.
Yeah.
And that really made me laugh.
I've never played a Final Fantasy game. I just said that because I knew Sephiroth was somehow attached to that sword or got hit by that sword or something. I don't know.
Yeah, he gets hit by that sword. That's how the game ends, is the sword finally hits him. But I think here's what it is. You have like a subtle tone. It's like this subtle confidence, but then it's also like there's a neediness in the way you talk to, like with the jokes, and it's such a weird combo. Either you should be confident and on your own track, but this confidence, like I'm on my train, on my own track, and I desperately want you to constantly look at this train. It's a weird combo.
That's not a bad way to put it. Because I do honestly, like, I think I try to disguise how needy I am in terms of I don't know if recognition is what I'm looking for, but it's very much like approval. Again, like I have 4 older siblings, and I think my whole life I've been trying to get people's approval. So when I came into Game Informer, I think you guys were you're not that much older than me. So I think like, but a lot of the guys there were like, oh, they're my brother's age. Like I'm used to this kind of group and I get along with them. And I think I know how to slide in. None of this is conscious, I don't think, but it's like, oh, I get along with these people because I'm practiced in this way. And all my older cousins and brothers, I was always trying to get their approval. And that was definitely something I was, okay, I don't need these guys' approval, but also I kind of do. And I'm going to act confident because I'm actually very, you pegged me. And I don't know if I like you trying to figure me out, but you figured me out.
I finally cracked it now in this conversation. But
yeah,
what was it like to be more involved, to make that subtle transition of being on more and more Giant Bomb stuff? Because I'm a fan, I know you're a fan. What was it like to be kind of a recurring guest on that site?
It was great. At first, it was Dan mainly pulling me on stuff, and Dan's always like, again, like as many times as me and Dan jokingly like make fun of each other. Dan is, I consider him, like, for people know him, know he is a exceedingly great friend. And he was always kind of like, from a professional sense, yeah, he was always championing me, but he was also as a friend, knowing that I was sort of frustrated with GameSpot a little bit in terms of, I came out to New York office and I knew, like all my managers knew, and I talked to them about that. They were like, I think you might get a little frustrated out there because you're not at the base of operations where we have these 3 studios to use, where we have all these editors and these videographers that can jump on your projects. Right. They're like, knowing you, Mike, I think you might get a little frustrated. It's like, no, I'll be fine. Of course, they were right. And I was too stubborn to admit it. But they were very right. And so I think whether because of the resources I had in the New York office, which are not many, just because it's not the HQ, or being so far removed from the home base, that I think Dan just knew sometimes I might need a break. So he would be like, hey, we should bring Mahardy on. And, you know, at first it was Dan bringing them on. And then since Dan left, I think a lot of people, see me as having that sometimes chaotic energy that Dan brought. And since he left, I don't think I'm consciously filling it, but I do bounce off Dan really well. But now it's more like, I do feel like sometimes I do have an abundance of energy and I need to expend it some way. And Giant Bomb's always been a great way to do that, because the GameSpot stuff I'm doing is all very long-term, and I can't just immediately get into a room and talk about, you know, this Division 2 expansion I've been playing or something with people who are very, very talented at hosting and bouncing off you and setting you up. And going over to Giant Bomb at first for me was very flattering. I think it was nice to be brought on to stuff. And it's all these people, again, like when you join the games industry, depending on, you know, what kind of sites you watch, Giant Bomb for me was the only game site I actually would seek out once I started doing this. That and Polygon, once Polygon did a pivot for their YouTube channel and stuff, I really like that stuff. But like outside of that, I wouldn't really consume games content. And going to Giant Bomb, it's like, oh, these are still guys I still see as these icons. You know, they've been around. They have this institutional knowledge. Can't say enough about like how subtly brilliant they are at, especially like Vinnie. I'll say it's hard to describe how good of a host he is until you start doing this long enough and you get into a room with him and you're like, people are like, holy shit, you were really good on the show. It's like, yeah, but Vinnie did most of the lifting. I just kind of like, he set me up and he was the T. I was playing T-ball for my jock reference. And I was like, it's hard not to do well when you got Vinnie there. And then you got Abby and Alex. Everybody at Giant Bomb's great at that stuff. And it's hard not to fit in if you do find a slot. And
right. What do you think it is? What do you think it is with Vinnie? Like, I was just thinking about it now. It's like, he seems like such an empathetic guy. It's weird to have somebody that has such a good read of how everybody's feeling at the table, but then also keeps things moving in the perfect way, but then also is so funny in and of himself. I'm endlessly jealous of him, and I would like to crawl into his body.
I've done it a few times.
Okay.
And I love it. But no, it's Vinnie. What you see on Giant Bomb is Vinnie Caravela as a person. He is genuinely up there with like top 3 most selfless people I've ever met. And I think that shines when he is on camera. And it's not something everybody appreciates, how good of a listener he is and how he's not waiting to transition to the next thing. He's actually listening to what you're saying. And he is thinking, how can I set Mike up, or how can I set Alex up? And he knows people so well that he is able to play to their strengths. He's like, what dumb but also insightful thing could I get Dan to say right now? What rant could I get Alex to go on? What like
how can I twist the knife in Bacalar a little bit just to get a rise out of him, you know?
Yeah, and he is just, if you ever get the chance to go on camera or just be in a room with him, like get drinks with him or anything, I think it's immediately apparent. It's like, this dude's actually listening. He is just utterly selfless, and it shows through on the Giant Bomb stuff. And I don't think people really value that as much as they should.
Yeah. Now, Mike, I don't want to get political here at MinnMax, but
I do.
I was really thinking about this the other day. I was like, I think if I had to vote for anybody on planet Earth to be president, I was thinking Vinnie would be a great president. Who better? So. Who better?
He sees the big picture, whether it's the conversation you're having or it is just like Giant Bomb, Viacom, CBS stuff. He is very good at like discerning what everybody is collectively kind of going toward, and whether that's something that he can contribute to or help other people contribute to. And again, I think that just shines through on any show he's on. It's like, I think he can step back and like see the episode in the future and see where it's going, which a lot of people, I'm sure you do that too with all the hosting you're doing, but like, he's just very talented at removing himself and having this, like, I don't know if it's out of body for him, but for me, sometimes when I'm really seeing the episode, it's like that. I think he's constantly seeing that, where with me, it's more bursts of that. Yeah, and it's something I can't really like admire enough.
Yeah, I'm nowhere near the host Vinnie is, but like I think there is a certain amount of that video background of just knowing, especially like, you know, when I'm editing the podcast, we don't edit it much, but like just knowing in my mind, and especially back at Game Informer where we made more like clips on YouTube, it was always helpful to be like, okay, if I steer this conversation this way, I know I can start it here for the YouTube clip because I'll set things up again in a subtle way where we won't annoy the podcast audience. You know, it's those types of little reframings. And I think seeing that big picture, I think it helps to have that video editing background for hosting podcasts.
Yeah. And I don't know if everybody knows this, but Vinny's like original background was actually design. So a lot of the Giant Bomb design you see is all Vinny. Most of it, a lot of it's Vinny. I know like Dan Auer over at Gamespot / Giant Bomb does a lot of it. Vinny has a very diverse skill set, and I don't really think he himself values his hosting skills as much as everybody around him does. But again, I think that kind of just makes him an even better host. But yeah, it's hard not to be able to bounce off people when you're with that group. It is just such an easy way to fit into, and like coming into the games industry and seeing them as people, I still admire them, but like these people I admire, being able to go on with them and become like a rotating member of the family, so to speak, has been awesome. It's been fun, but it's also just been done wonders for my argumentative skills, for my verbal, like whether it's persuasion or some sort of just bouncing off people. And I've not always been good socially. I have a constant anxiety, very, very bad with eye contact in person. Like incredibly, it's been painful for me to make eye contact. I've been working on it the last 5 years because I know it's off-putting to people.
Yeah.
Like socially, it has not always been my cup of tea. And Giant Bomb, both on camera and off, have been so great about encouraging me to be more confident in social situation, which is weird because I do think I give off this fake confidence, but I think Giant Bomb has been better at pushing me to like for that confidence to be a little more real.
Yeah, just don't get too much confidence. Just keep it in check. Buddy.
Yeah, like I got to stay humble in some sort of way.
I know it's such a challenge.
I know.
Okay, outside of Giant Bomb, folks and stuff, like who really impressed you in the industry? Who have you been wowed by on the press or dev side, where it's just like, Jesus, this is the unsung hero in the game industry that I've encountered here?
Dev side, there's definitely been people I have interviewed that really struck me. I guess I'll just say, and my favorite person to interview ever in my years that I've been doing this is Harvey Smith.
Yeah.
Which is probably not super surprising, but it's deceptive. That guy he still like has this youthful energy, but he's been around since like early Origin days, like when the code to get into the office at Looking Glass was 0451 and everything. And just talking to him, he's not just entrenched in game design, which he knows extremely well. He's not just entrenched in writing and narrative, which again, he knows extremely well. He himself has a really big picture of it, but there's also the interviews I've done with him just take on this personal aspect where we did an History of Arcane documentary, and I interviewed him, and it went into this territory where he was talking about getting up in years, like into his 50s, and he's like, how the am I going to keep doing this? Like, game development is like exhausting when you're 25, let alone 55. Like, he got into this very real arena that I did not expect to go into, but he's got such a good understanding of just how humans tick, like whether they're playing a game or whether you're talking to him face to face. And it's always just incredibly fun to chat with him and realize that you've been talking with him for 45 minutes about some random thing that has nothing to do with games, and it was still insightful as hell.
Yeah, he can hold a room, like the times I've been to Arcane Lyon and also in Austin a couple times. But it's just stunning. Like the second he opens his mouth, it's like, wait, what is this guy going to do? And it's so rare to see that from a creative director of just like being immediately fascinating. But I guess they kind of gravitate towards that role then, right? Of like, well, where else are we going to go? But just lead the studio, lead the team.
Yeah. Outside of him, it's been, I think in games media, I don't know. There's a lot of people I respect in games media. I really like the work Matt Lyon does, and he's very much not a spotlight person. So I don't think everybody, people know, like he goes back to the 1UP days, correct?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So he's been around doing his thing for a while, but for those who might not know, he's the features guy over at Polygon, and he's been doing, again, he was the deputy features editor when I first started doing features for them, but now he's for several years now, like 6 or 7, he's been the person doing features, and like his stuff is always great, and it's very, again, he's a great writer, but he's just an even better reporter. So he knows how to tell in a long form aspect, and I love that. And
just swing big, like what was it, like the history of the PlayStation? I know he didn't edit this necessarily, but he was producing, and it was that video where it was just the old timer Japanese devs in Japan drinking some booze and talking about actually programming on the PlayStation 1. It's like, man, this is insight into the industry that we should really appreciate, because you never see this stuff. You're lucky if you see Western devs.
Oral history of Street Fighter as well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was fantastic. He's done a ton of stuff. The first thing he edited of mine, I think, was that Fulbright company, the Gone Home one. And I still like catch up with him every once in a while, kind of. But again, he's not in social media and in that sphere. He's not the most. He doesn't put himself out there as much. So I wish I caught up with him more. But he's always been someone I admire, especially as a features like minded person. Like I consider myself.
Nice. And
but then you, man.
What's that?
You. I've always respected what you do. Yeah, your stuff. I'm not just kissing your tuchus. I'm talking. Me and Danny always used to talk about your stuff when we worked together at Game Informer me and Danny at GameSpot, and then we were at Dan Reichert's, not his wedding in Vegas at Taco Bell. It was at his reception in Jersey, and that was the first time that me, you, and Danny got to talk about our work for a little bit. We didn't talk about work much. It was at the wedding, but
I felt very uncomfortable because I walked up and I was like, "Oh, you guys are really venting about work stuff," and then I'm going to slide up and just be like, "Hey, I like a video."
Well, he had started
here
Noclip
too.
by that point, I think. I just caught up with Danny the other day about career change stuff, and it's always great to catch up with him. But I don't think anybody can question whether Noclip has just knocked it out of the park since the beginning. Yeah, and that's very refreshing, because a lot of Noclip's mission from that video Danny made, like it's like why I left games media. He was talking about the problems inherent with what at the time GameSpot, was modeled around, and why it didn't really, maybe not inherent problems, but for him to be working there, it didn't exactly suit his skill set and what he wanted to do. So by starting Noclip, and Noclip very much is just, to me, a projection of Danny's mind, and it's great to see it all laid out on YouTube. I think he's just been doing phenomenal work, and I need to catch up on a couple of his things, but I usually watch most of his documentaries, and they're always a great source of inspiration / places to steal from.
Gotcha, man. Well, hey, I feel like I got to let you go, but best of luck in the future. You feeling good about the big shift?
Yeah, I think Monday or Tuesday I'll be talking about it publicly. It's still in games media. It's a bit different than I think what a lot of people or whatever, like a few people that care where I'm going are expecting.
Yeah.
Still in New York, but I'm looking forward to talking more about it. And like I said, starting something new from the ground up is very enticing, and something I haven't been able to do ever on a large scale. And looking forward to that. And like I said, I'll keep working on being quieter in general, but for the time being, I'll be loud talking about this new thing.
Yeah, for sure. And I've been meaning to ask you, how much are you making at the new gig?
I think comes out to like 7,500 a week or something.
7,500
Dude,
a week.
I don't do the math in your head what I'm making a year, but that's what it is.
Neat.
Putting most of it into savings and charity.
Oh, what a fun twist at the end. Hey, Mike, congratulations on a good career so far, man, and best of luck with the new gig.
Thank you. Keep up the good work, and hi, everyone at MinnMax. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, take care, dude.
See ya.
Hey, and that's it. Thanks so much for watching and listening to this. If you are watching it and you appreciated the conversation and appreciate the indie effort we have here at MinnMax, we'd always appreciate your support on Patreon, patreon.com/MinnMax2Ns. We have a main podcast, which is the MinnMax Show. Hopefully we can have Mike on in the future. Otherwise, we have the Deepest Dive, which is our community game club. We're going to be doing Final Fantasy VII's remake coming up very soon, which is going to be the best, most thorough discussion of the remake on the internet. So please check it out. Thanks, everybody.
Content like this is supported by the community on patreon.com/MinnMax.
And if you continue to support us and you're here long enough, you can even eventually hear me talk about Breath of the Wild 2.
Check us out. Thank you so much.